For our fourth lesson, we're going to be working with percent today. So the learning intentions, what I expect you to be able to do by the end of the video, is to be able to change a number that's in a percent into a decimal, and also work on being able to change a decimal into percents. The second thing you'll be able to do is you'll be able to calculate a percent of a number. And the last thing will be to be able to calculate percent. On a test, if you got 75 out of 80 correct, what would the percent be? So the first part of the lesson will be changing from percent to decimal or decimal to percent. So first, to change from percent to decimal, there's two ways to do it. One, you could, in your calculator or in your head, take your percent and divide it by 100. The other method would be to move the decimal 2 spots to the left. Essentially, by dividing by 100, you are moving 2 spots to the left. So for example, if I wanted to change 78% into its decimal form, I could divide by 100. I could take out my calculator. And if I divided by 100, 78% divided by 100 is 0.78. Or if I had done it the second method, if you start with 78%, there's a decimal right here. We don't write decimals at the end of whole numbers, but there's one there. What you could do is you could move it instead by moving it 2 spots to the left. So if I take this decimal and I jump 2 spots to the left, I have 0.78. Now going from decimal to percent, it's the opposite. For decimals to percents, we multiply by 100, or what you're essentially doing by multiplying by 100 is you're moving the decimal 2 spots to the right. So if I started with a decimal like 0.32 and I wanted to change that into a percent, I could either times it by 100 and I would get 32%. Or I could have started with 0.32. And the second method was to move the decimal 2 spots to the right. So if I take my decimal, take 2 hops, I get 32, and now it is a percent. Okay, so let's take a look and try 2 more of these. Let's try turning 55% into a decimal. And we'll try turning 0.07 into a percent. So percent to decimal, we divide by 100. So I could divide by 100, and I would get 0.55. In the other method, we start with 55. There's a decimal we don't show, but it's there. 2 jumps to the left, and it's 0.55. Now, looking at a decimal into a percent, we can times by 100, and this would be 7%. Or I could have taken 0.07, and when we go from a decimal to a percent, we make 2 jumps to the right. 0.007 is 7%. Now what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the percent of a number, and we have 2 ways to do this. So first, if we want to find 20% of 50, we can use the ratios that we've been using. Now percent is always out of 100, so we could say that 20 out of 100, so 20% out of a possible 100%, 100% represents everything, equals what out of 50? Because 50 is our total amount. We're looking for 20% of 50. And now, the method we've been using is our fish technique. We get, starting at the 50, 50 times 20, divide by 100, and our answer is 10. So 20% of 50 is 10. The second way we could do this is, maybe remember back to math you've done in earlier grades. Of means multiply. So 20% of 50. Well, 20%, we just learned how to turn that into a decimal. I'm going to make my decimal jump 2 to the left. So I have 0.20. Of is times 50. I'm just going to go like that to show these are two different parts. 0.2 times 50 is 10. So 20% of 50 is 10. So let's look at another example that's similar to the last one. Calculate 130% of 20. Now, typically 100% represents everything, but it's possible to have more than 100%. Okay, you'd have all of it plus a little extra. So using our last technique, well, 130%, percent is always out of 100, and this is going to equal how much of 20? And again, we can use our fish technique. 20 times 130 divided by 100 is 26. Using our second method, if you prefer that, 130% of 20 is, move your decimal 2 jumps to the left, 1.30. Of is times 20 is 26. Now we're looking at what percent is one number of a second number. So an example when you'd use this is on a test. If you got 20 out of 25 on a test, or on a test you got 30 out of 50, and you want to know what percent you got. Well, to do this, we can say that you have 30 out of 50, and using our ratios, that is what percent of 100, because percent is always out of 100. And now if we use our fish technique, 100 times 30, divide 50, is 60%. The other way we can do this one is 30 out of 50. If we think of it as a fraction, because it is a fraction, we can simply divide them and it will give us a decimal. 30 divided 50 is 0.6. And now we can find percents by timesing by 100. So decimals turn into percents by timesing by 100, and we get 60%. So if you want to look at some more examples in your book, you could read pages 36 to 41, and that is also the questions I'll have you do. You're working on pages 36 to 41 in your workbook, and when you're done that, you can go on to lesson 5.